This sweater, like, it smells bad. Like, you can tell this guy has been wearing it for weeks, and it probably stinks of cigarette. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Media Cutter One and its YouTube channel. Today is going to be a bit of a kind of a one-off video where I wind up some yarn and we talk about Empire Records and specifically the sweaters in Empire Records. So if you are looking for some 90s inspired knitting ideas, I hope you'll stick around. All right, friends, I, as usual, forgot to put my microphone on before I recorded the intro, but what's done is done. I'm not going to redo it, and hopefully you can hear me quite well now. So today's video is just kind of a random thought I had. It's just about Easter weekend here. Things are busy. I've already, shared a lot of spring and summer kind of inspired stuff. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to talk about this week. So I thought this is what we would talk about. April 8th was Rex Manning Day.
Friggin' Rex Manning Day.
If you are unfamiliar with the movie Empire Records, I'm not 100% sure why you're watching this video, but still, it is a movie that takes place in Delaware in a record shop. It was recorded in 1994 and released in 1995. And according to a poster in the window of the store, April 8th is the day that Rex Manning is going to come to the shop to do autographs. He is a famous singer. So on April 8th, we celebrate Rex Manning Day, which means those of us who were teenagers in the 90s, we rewatch Empire Records, and I do this every year. And this year I was thinking a lot about the sweaters, so I thought that would be fun to talk about today. I also need to wind the yarn off of this cone so that I can use it. So you may have seen these cones sitting behind me for a lot of videos recently. I bought these several years ago. These are from Julie Asselin. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It is her Nurtured Fine, and it is obviously on a cone. I had bought them for a specific project, then changed my mind, and they've just kind of been sitting here. But now I've got a new project. I am participating in a test knit that I specifically signed up for so that I could use this yarn. However, I don't really recommend knitting right off the cone, which is what I kind of started to do, and the yarn seemed very overspun. It's been stuck on this cone for a while, so what I want to do is to wind it off, give it a bath, and then cake it up. I've already done one of the purple cones, but now I'm going to do this one. So I can do that with my nitty knotty here while we talk about Empire Records and specifically the sweaters. And but before I get started, the t-shirt I'm wearing today is my Amankai tee. This is a t-shirt pattern that is knit in Camellia Fiber Company Flax Fingering, I believe it's called, which is a linen alpaca blend. And it is sort of a plain tee on the front, and then it has this nice detail along the back shoulders. And furthermore, if you stick around or fast forward to the end of the video, if I can find them, I will share some photos of myself in the 90s wearing sweaters. All right, I've got to start here. So let's see how we do while attempting to talk at the same time. So Empire Records was filmed in 1994 and released in 1995, and it was not at the time particularly popular. It's kind of, I don't think I'm doing this right, competing with Clueless for an audience, and I definitely did not see it at that time. So canonically, I am a little bit younger than the characters in the movie. So Corey, the character played by Liv Tyler, is supposed to be Harvard class of 1998. And 1998 is the year I graduated from high school, so that puts me a little bit younger. Then most of the characters, nobody else's ages are specifically mentioned. Definitely some of them are a little older, seem to be in their early 20s. I think part of the perhaps reason it wasn't super popular at the time is actually that it's a little bit too realistic. So you had it Clueless, which was, rich people using funny words and having rich people problems. Um, and that was kind of more interesting to audiences than a movie about, kind of suburban teenagers in the United States. But watching it now, it really resonates with me as a great example, perhaps not a perfect example, but a great example of what it was like to have a part time job as a teenager in the 1990s. I did not work in a record store, I worked in a movie theater. But a lot of the stuff is very accurate. You've got the kids who don't really need the money, but their parents are making them get a job. You've got the kids who definitely do need the money, and then you've got sort of um, the older, maybe early 20s, or people who are actually trying to make a living off of this job. Probably with some other part-time jobs, and then you have like the manager who seems old but is probably in his 30s and is trying to walk that really fine line between, friend and boss to his teenage employees. And then you have, sort of the owner that nobody likes. Everybody thinks he's a big jerk. And then you've got just kids from different backgrounds. You've got kids from happy homes and kids from broken homes, and you've got the stoners, and you've got the preppy girls, and it's just very, in my experience, very accurate. Watching the movie as an adult, I feel so bad for Joe. Joe is the manager, and he is just trying to keep his little band of teenage employees together, and it is a job.
You'll be sorry. I'm already sorry.
But what we want to talk about are the clothes, and specifically the sweaters. So there are 4 sweaters in this movie that we can talk about. Overall, because it was filmed, during the 90s, and it was just kind of supposed to be, portraying a bunch of suburban white kids, the clothes overall I find pretty accurate. Not 100%, relatively close. Unlike, Clueless, I think started a lot of fashion trends. Um, but average teenagers generally weren't dressing like that because, again, Clueless is about rich people doing rich people things. Um, so we have 4 sweaters to talk about, and I'm going to talk about them from sort of the least interesting to what I personally consider to be the best sweater in the movie. And I am going to share some pattern ideas if you are interested in trying to recreate these sweaters. I still can't tell if I'm doing this right. I just did it for the purple cone, but it looks a little off. I guess I'm going to find out when I try to take it off. We'll see. Anyway, so we're going to start with Gina. Gina is the character played by Renee Zellweger. I would also like to note, even though it's not relevant, that in this movie, Renee Zellweger's character is supposed to be around the same age as Corey, which would put her around 18, in 1994. And by the year 2000, Renee Zellweger is filming Bridget Jones, where she's supposed to be this, mid 30s spinster character. So that's Hollywood for you. So Gina's look in this movie, I don't find the overall style particularly accurate. I don't recall people wearing necessarily little cardigans in this style. But what I think is accurate is the proportions. So this, as you can see, cardigan is very small. It is very close fitting. We were not wearing a whole lot of oversized stuff, especially by the mid 90s. So pants, shorts might still be baggy, but tops, definitely not. So in terms of that, the overall sizing and proportions of the sweater, I think that is definitely accurate. Now, this is probably not really a sweater. It's more like some jersey knit fabric cut and sewn into a sweater-like shape. But that doesn't mean we couldn't recreate it with knitting. We can see it has a set-in sleeve, it has a V-neck, and it has a what we would call a double knit button band. So definitely not a ribbed button band, which is perhaps more traditional with sweaters. Now, I will say overall, because of the relative simplicity of these sweaters that I'm sharing with you, I assumed I was going to find a lot of ideas on Ravelry, but I actually didn't. So, in trying to recreate any of these sweaters, you will probably have to make some modifications. So, what I did find for Gina and her teeny tiny cardigan. Um, One, I think this teddy deer cardigan light might work. It definitely has sort of the double knit button band, the larger buttons, and the V-neck. However, it is a raglan style. It looks like it's a compound raglan maybe, which gives a little bit more of a look of a set-in sleeve, but it's not a set-in sleeve. Um, that's not going to be super noticeable if you're going to make a black sweater like Gina's cardigan. However, these sleeves here are very, very oversized, and that is not going to work. So you will definitely have to pull those sleeves in dramatically to get that close fit like Gina has in her little black cardi. All of these patterns are going to be linked in a Ravelry bundle that I will include in the description box down below. But again, that one was the Teddy Deer Cardigan Light, which is by Kadri. This is worked in a fingering weight yarn, so definitely if you're going to have kind of a tiny cardigan with a close fit, you're going to want to be working at a fine gauge. The other pattern that I think might work with some modifications is My Little Black Cardigan. This is a pattern by Naoko Ogawa. However, again, we're going to have to do some modifications here in that we do have a set-in sleeve, which is good, but we don't have a double knit button band. So that might be a modification that you would want to make. We do have closer fitting sleeves and a closer fitting body, and we do have a very light yarn. So overall, the fit on this one is closer, I think. You would have to crop it. So this is definitely a bit longer than what we're seeing. And I think even Gina's sleeves are even a little bit closer fitting than this. I think the body fit on this is probably pretty good. You've got the V-neck. You just have to modify for a double knit button band and a wider button band than what is shown here.
Shock me with that deviant behavior.
So those were the two closest patterns I could find for something like Gina's cardigan. Next up, we have Lucas. Lucas is one of the characters who I think is supposed to be a little bit older, so maybe more late teens, early 20s, and he is wearing this all-over ribbed black turtleneck. I don't see this a lot for men in the 90s. Maybe I'm hanging out with the wrong guys. I don't know. Women, definitely. That it would have been even closer fitting than this. So we can see this does have a pretty close fit. Also, this character is very, very skinny. I recall he also is in Dazed and Confused, which is another great movie from the 90s, but set in the 70s. So this particular piece doesn't look like super stereotypical 90s to me for men. Definitely for women, again, the ribbing is going to, and in fact, women were wearing things that were not only ribbed, but also had like that kind of ruched fabric that was pulling in. So it was just, everything was so close fitting. A basic ribbed turtleneck should be kind of easy to find a pattern for. But again, I didn't find a lot of all over ribbed sweaters with a close fit and a turtleneck. Modifications can be made, but I will share the two things I think probably would work best. So the first one is sweater number 16. This is a pattern by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and you can see that it's striped, but you could just skip the stripes. And then you have this all over ribbed sweater. It is already relatively close fitting. It already has that nice big turtleneck. So this is knit with a light fingering and a lace weight held double, or you could probably substitute in just a single heavy fingering sport weight yarn. Overall, I think taking the stripes out of this one might be your best bet for this sort of classic close fitting ribbed pullover. However, if you actually wanted to knit the ribbed pullover for a gentleman like Lucas here, this one is, designed for women. So you might need to make some changes there. Overall, I really like this one. I think the sleeve line is closer here. So this is a sort of contiguous saddle shoulder that gives you that look of a bit of a set-in sleeve. I think that's going to be closer than the other one I'm going to show you, which doesn't have the stripes, and that is the Biella sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. So here again, we have an all-over ribbed construction. So this one has raglan lines, which is really not quite the same as the sweater Lucas is wearing, but it also has probably a bit of a more straightforward construction. And it is not striped. And I think I don't know, something about the overall look of this one, the overall fit, I think maybe might be a little closer. I would, however, say you would have to make the turtleneck a little bit longer to match. This one is also in a DK weight yarn, so it's going to knit up a little faster as well. So if you want that all over ribbed turtleneck, pullover, close fitting Lucas vibe, those are your two options there. All right, now we're going to go to the number 2 sweater. And I know you're thinking that the sweater that Corey wears is going to be the number 1 sweater, but it's not.
Hi, how are you today?
It's going to be the number 2 sweater for me. And this really surprised me, and that I had a lot of trouble finding something that really looked like this. So this is the sweater that Liv Tyler's character Corey wears throughout the film, which takes place over one day. So it's fine that she's wearing the same sweater the whole time. And it is just kind of a fuzzy, cropped, boxy pullover. And if we look at the close-up, we can see that it's actually ribbed, but with the fuzziness of the yarn, I don't think that matters super a lot. It also, you can see, has a slight V-neck. This is definitely super 90s. Of course, in the 90s, it would have made out of some like horrible acrylic, and you would have bought it at, Rave, or where else did we shop that was terrible? Old Navy would have had something like this. This does seem pretty accurate, just a fuzzy, comfy sweater. However, as I said, I really had a challenge finding a pattern that I thought really gave the same vibes as this one. Which is that it has sort of a cropped, boxy fit. You'll notice it doesn't have any ribbed trimming. There's no rib at the cuffs. There's no rib at the hem. There is a tiny bit of ribbing at the collar, and that's really it. That kind of finishing is pretty standard for sweaters now. So finding a sweater that doesn't have it, it's a modification you can make, but you have to kind of put some consideration into it, because if you are not going to have a wide ribbed hem or a wide ribbed cuff, what are you going to have? So it's hard to tell. There might actually be, because there is ribbing in the body. It's very fine gauge though. It's definitely like a 1x1 rib, and it is worked with very fine yarn. There might be some ribbing there, but it would blend seamlessly into the body. So it's not going to have this sort of standout ribbing, but it's hard to tell, to be honest. But honestly, looking at it, it looks like the sweater just ends, and there's no specific trim on either the body or the sleeves. So this was actually a little bit more challenging than I thought, finding a pattern. Trying to make a boxy pullover in an all-over rib, just, in a hand knit sweater, doesn't really work. If you have that ribbing, it's going to be pulling inwards, so you're not going to get that boxy shape. So it looks like ribbing in the pictures. Maybe it's a faux rib. Maybe it's just a textured fabric. Maybe it is simply, manufactured out of some acrylic that doesn't, pull back in. I don't know what the deal is. So one option I think might be the Pure Fuzz sweater. This is a pattern by Skein Deer Knits, and it is just kind of a fuzzy sweater of a very similar style. It has an oversized kind of boxy fit, a cropped shape. It is worked in a dark yarn, so you really can't see what exact trim she has going on at the cuffs and hem. And if you've got that fuzzy yarn kind of obscuring it, then it might blend in kind of seamlessly as it does in the photo. The neckline is not quite right here, but that is something you could change relatively easily if you were looking to modify this pattern. So this is, and I think this is a wool held double with a single strand of a fuzzy yarn, but I think if you really wanted to give it that fuzzy look, you might go for 2 strands of the fuzzy yarn, or use a surrey, which tends to be fluffier a little bit and also obscures the stitches more a little bit than the silk mohair. And that's going to bring it more in line with what we see in the pictures. Another option, but I think would require some modifications, is the Darren pullover. So this is a pattern by Jack Cieslak, and it is in her Body collection. I have a little short sleeve version of this. So what I think might work with this one, again, it's fuzzy, so it's using a silk mohair held with some other, fingering weight yarn. It has the set-in sleeve, which more closely matches. And as I recall from working the pattern, it's very customizable. So you will be able to create sort of the fit that you want. Okay, so it says the pattern includes 12 sizes, optional horizontal bust darts, 6 sizes, and 3 custom fit formulas. So you can get sort of the exact fit that you want here. I also recall it's got like short sleeves, long sleeves, cropped, etc. So it's cropped, full length versions. I know it has short and long sleeves. The only real issue here would be the neckline, and I think that would be relatively easy to adjust. So those are my 2 suggestions for that one, but overall, I really didn't find anything that I thought really met the same vibe as Corey's sweater here. So that one you might have to play around with a little bit more, but overall, I think that kind of fuzzy, comfy sweater, it's a sweater, but it's so cropped and it's, soft to the touch. It's very, very appropriate for the 90s. And then the last sweater we're going to talk about is AJ's sweater. I love this sweater. This is such a grandpa sweater. I feel like, yes, there were men wearing these in the 90s, and it was all sort of part of the grunge aesthetic. Well, now that I think about it, I bet it kind of looks like that famous Kurt Cobain sweater that sold at auction, has kind of that vibe. So this sweater, like, it smells bad. Like, you can tell this guy has been wearing it for weeks, and it probably stinks of cigarettes, but it's such a great grandpa sweater. I love it. So this is definitely a drop shoulder sweater, obviously very oversized. It does have button bands. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that there is actually some contrast color trim inside the button band. There's like an extra layer of fabric that goes up and around that is a slightly different color. The bottom, it's like rolled hems. Definitely like he sticks his thumbs through the sleeves. The bottom leg is probably ripped a little bit somewhere. Like, it's very, the aesthetic is very grunge. There's no pockets, sadly. It does have buttons and a button band. They're worn open the whole time. And if we zoom in here, we can see this is really fuzzy. I think this would be a great option for going with a boucle yarn. Not a super fuzzy boucle, something that's a little finer and maybe denser, so it's not all wild, but I think that would be a really good choice here to kind of replicate this look. Hopefully your replicated sweater is going to smell better. I remember this guy from the 90s, and that sweater did not smell good. So I have a couple of ideas here. None of them are going to have this contrast trim, so that would be something that you would do on your own, adding that in. And none of them are in a boucle yarn. So again, that's a change you're going to make on your own. But they sort of have like the right overall fit and kind of woolly aesthetic here. So the first one is the Traveler's Cardigan. This is a pattern by Ozetta. What is happening? I'm not talking to you. Like, just because I'm talking doesn't mean I'm talking to you. Do you think I'm talking to you? Do you want to say hi? Hello. Thank you. So this one definitely has that oversized fit. It has a really an interesting looking button band, but overall it's a simple shape. It's got that drop shoulder, so there's not a lot fancy going on here. You would maybe adjust the cuffs and the bottom trim to be that kind of rolled. That's an easy that's an easy thing to do. But overall, I think it has the right look and the right shape to make some modifications to fit that sweater. And then the other one I think might be an interesting candidate here is the Callias by Isabel Kramer. So it has this oversized fit. Again, it has just something a little interesting going on with the button bands. It doesn't look like there are actually buttonholes here. It's something you could add on though. And it would be relatively easily modified for that, for the rolled um, cuffs and hem trim. Now this has a slightly different shape with the contiguous pickup, along the back and then coming over this way. So it doesn't quite have the same drop shoulder. But I think the overall oversized look of this sweater, again, makes it a good candidate for maybe modifying to create your own AJ sweater. All right, so there you have it. A look at the 4 sweaters from Empire Records, which I consider an excellent source if you want a look at what life was like for suburban teenagers in majority white suburbs in the mid-Atlantic in the 1990s. Again, overall, I was kind of surprised that I didn't find more patterns that kind of met the details of the sweaters, because none of the sweaters are particularly complex or innovative or have a lot going on. They're relatively straightforward sweaters, maybe with a few interesting details or maybe an interesting yarn choice. But I really didn't find too much. So if you would like to create your own 90s inspired sweaters, it seems like you might have to do a little bit of modification. But I have included links to the patterns that I talked about, as well as a few extras in that bundle if you want to try to create your own Empire Records inspired sweaters.
Empire Records open till midnight this March.
I think I might personally try to recreate that AJ sweater. Not now. It's April and I have no use for it right now. But I think it would be a great cozy sweater for the fall. And I think a lot of companies have been coming out with some boucle yarns recently that I think are going to give it that nice fuzzy look. So that is the one on my list. What do you think? What do you think about Empire Records? What do you think about the sweaters, etc., etc.? Please do leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Thank you for joining me for today's video. It was a little outside our usual video content, but what can I say? The kids are home on spring break. We're trying to get ready for Easter. The world's collapsing around our ears, so there it is.
Damn the man! Save the Empire!
If you enjoyed it or found it entertaining or interesting, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. New knitting videos here every Saturday. I will be back next Saturday with a new episode of the podcast, at which point I will show you how this yarn is looking and show you what I am making with it. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Amelia Padawana, and I will see you soon in another video.